Canada. We also have Stephen Van Alstine on the line to answer any of your questions. Stephen is the Vice President, Education at the Canadian Payroll Association. A few housekeeping pieces. All participants will be muted throughout the presentation, so please direct your questions to Andy or the WebEx host using the chat function. And now I'm pleased to hand over to Andy.
Thank you very much, April. Hello and a very good morning or early afternoon to you, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining us on today's webinar, where we'll share with you the results from our 2016 survey of payroll workers and managers across Canada in association with the Canadian Payroll Association. To give you a little bit of background on me, I'm Andy Roebling, and I've been with Hays for 25 years. Moved to Canada 3 years ago from the UK, and currently VP of Client Development. My contact information is on this slide, and you're welcome to contact me if you have any questions arising from the presentation. Joining us also today is Stephen Van Alstine, the Vice President of Education from the Canadian Payroll Association, who will be available to answer questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for joining us, Stephen. So, to begin with, the headlines from the salary guide on Canada's payroll market. To begin with, expectations for business activity are strong, but they are more conservative certainly than in previous years, and we are feeling the effect nationally of the economy in Alberta. As a consequence, hiring remains flat year on year. We are seeing a slow increase in salary rises. However, we also do foresee a retention concern for employers, in that half of payroll workers say they're not being paid market rate, and we'll look at that in a bit more detail. But perhaps balancing this, benefits packages we feel do offer opportunities to attract and retain top payroll professionals. So, firstly, business activity and hiring trends, as mentioned, we are seeing an impact from uncertainty in Alberta, but overall we're seeing a stable picture year on year. So if we look first at business activities, business activity expectations do vary across Canada, with more than a quarter of Alberta respondents saying activity will drop in 2016, compared with just 7% of BC or Ontario respondents. If we look outside of central Canada, we have 59% expecting business activity to increase in 2016. So whilst we see a downward trend, if we take the country as a whole, if we looked outside central Canada, as I said, the national picture would be consistent with the last couple of years. How does this impact on hiring plans? Well, we did see a slight increase in hiring ahead of prediction in 2015, but we also saw that balanced with more people reducing headcount. This year, again, with the impact of oil and gas, we're seeing a slight dip in those expecting to increase headcount. But overall, as you can see from this trend line, we're seeing a consistent majority expecting to keep headcount the same in 2016. Moving on to contingent workforce, temporary or contract hiring, the use of contingent workforce also remains pretty stable. We have about half of employers who don't currently use temps, and those that do, the majority of them are expecting to actually maintain their usage of temporary or contract teams rather than to increase or decrease them this year. A word on reclassification risk when we're looking at contingent workforce as opposed to independent contractors. Contingent workforce are going to be temps or T4 workers, and as such you should be paying them by your payroll process, as the payroll burdens are the same for full-time or for permanent workers. However, if you have a business that employs consultants, perhaps IT workers or knowledge-based management consultants, it's likely that these workers are incorporated and operating therefore as a business. But if you pay them via your traditional payroll process, it's very difficult to distinguish between them and your employed workforce. So to reduce this risk, we recommend a completely separate process and pay them at the very least through accounts payable and on a different cycle, i.e. monthly as opposed to weekly. This does reduce your risk, but the safest option is to use a third-party provider to facilitate the payments. Hays offers this service to our clients with flow-through rates as low as $1 an hour, and feel free to contact us on this point afterwards. Now, if we look at compensation trends, and we're also going to examine whether payroll workers are feeling underpaid. So we see that 47%, most of payroll workers can expect pay rises of up to 3%, whilst 23% are predicted to have no increase at all. Now, these increases are consistent with the past 2 years' data. Last year, we had just 15% of respondents predicting that salaries would not increase, but by the end of the year, what actually happened was that number was 23%, so the same as is predicted for this year. And like the changing business activity expectations, this shift is being driven by Alberta respondents, where 41% of respondents saw no salary increases. So overall, the headline figure looks like we're seeing pretty much the same increase in salaries. We had 2.3% in 2015, and we've got 2.2% as the average predicted salary increase in 2016. As a side note, our data shows that certified payroll professionals are earning up to 20% more in the market. Our next slide looks, as I mentioned earlier, at a potential mismatch in salary expectations between employers and employees. We have a third of payroll respondents to our survey saying that they are paid below market rate. We have a further 22% who are unsure and don't know what the actual market rate is or where they compare to it. Now, this uncertainty can be resolved, obviously, in part by payroll professionals accessing our payroll salary guide. However, these figures should also make employers perhaps pause for thought. There are clearly lots of ways to attract and retain great employees, but having competitive compensation is one of the most important. If less than half of payroll workers think their salary is competitive, that could become a cause of dissatisfaction and motivation to look for new opportunities. Now, it does appear that employers recognize this, with compensation package being the most important element in their recruitment plan. That being the case, we suggest employers take the time to assess their market competitiveness and be prepared to communicate that either they are or be prepared to address it if this in fact is an issue for them. In the next section, recruitment and retention, we'll look at how skill shortages are impacting on the payroll function. We have, from the survey, the majority, 71%, of hiring managers saying they are having difficulty recruiting people with the right payroll skills, and this is most prevalent at the intermediate to mid-level, and employees most in demand at 44% of employers having that issue. In terms of where the biggest challenge is in recruiting payroll professionals, in terms of what people are actually looking for, personality fit still tops the list of what's most important to employers when they're recruiting. However, like last year, we're also seeing that the combination of specific systems knowledge, compliance knowledge, and also desired credentials will combine to outweigh personality fit overall. When we ask potential job seekers what would be most important to them when they're considering an offer, compensation is the single most important factor. However, with the right benefits and work-life balance, those factors can collectively outweigh compensation. Now, by definition, only one employer can pay the most, so what most employers should aim to do is to meet the market rate and then focus on differentiators such as benefits and culture that can outweigh compensation. Again, the salary guide is designed to help you assess market competitiveness. I run the risk of sounding a bit like a broken record on this issue, but if you're not meeting market rate, there's potentially a serious recruitment and retention issue. So we feel that should be your number one takeaway from today. Know what the market rate is and make sure you're offering it or in a position to offer it. Now, clearly, to get into that position, if you're below, could be a long-term process, but at least communicate that with your workers, let them know what you're doing to fix the issue. With 1/3 of employers surveyed saying that retention is a challenge, employers must ensure that they are meeting market rates if they can. Once employers have addressed that initial issue, they can then focus on key differentiators such as benefits, culture, and employee branding that will ensure they stand out to potential candidates. Career progression is second only in importance to salary for retention, and 84% of payroll respondents are aiming for a management position. However, only 22% of employers actually have a succession plan. And whilst this is a challenge, it does also represent a significant opportunity to employers offering the career path they want and to differentiate your company from your competitors. Now, the last section of the guide we're going to look at is benefits and consider whether some employers are missing out on the opportunity to stand out from the crowd. If we look at the chart on the right, we'll see that the top 3 benefits that payroll professionals consider most important are pension and RRSP contributions or matching at 21%. We have health and dental at 19% and flexible working hours at 18%. Whilst 96% of employers are already offering health and dental, the other 2 categories of benefits offer significant opportunities for better recruitment and retention outcomes. We have 2/3 of employers offering pension or RRSP contributions, and just over half offer flexible work hours. However, only 1/4 of employers offer all 3 of these benefits. By including these sought-after benefits in compensation packages, employers can attract and retain top employees who are looking beyond salary when assessing job offers and opportunities. So to conclude, that's everything that we want to communicate from the guide itself today. I'm going to leave you with our key findings and recommendations. On key findings, confidence has been knocked by the Alberta economy. However, elsewhere sentiment is holding steady year on year in terms of business activity. Whilst there is a skill shortage at the intermediate to middle market, it appears that employers could be doing more to offer much sought after training and career progression. Employers do have an opportunity to stand out from the competition when it comes to attracting the best talent and holding on to it as well by promoting the benefits that they offer. And lastly, whilst personality fit heads the list of employer needs, when making the final decision, skills, designation and compliance can be a winning combination. So in terms of our recommendations, we would encourage employers to ensure your compensation package is competitive, first of all understanding whether it is and doing what you can to make it competitive. Differentiate yourself from the competition by offering sought-after benefits that we know are important to job seekers. And also what is important is offering career progression. This is an aid to both retention and recruitment, and we encourage employers to look at establishing succession plans if they don't already have them. As far as job seekers are concerned, again, it's very important that people actually know their market rate when they're looking at a new job. Also thinking about negotiating beyond the base salary. The right combination of benefits could end up meaning more to your quality of life than an increase in compensation. And then lastly, prioritize continual learning. This is both to maximize your value to your existing employer, but also future employers by getting certified, developing compliance knowledge, and also expanding on your business acumen. So that's the end of the key messages we wanted to share with you today. Thank you very much for dialing in and listening, and hope you found it useful. We now have a few minutes to spare to answer any questions that you have. If you have a question, please type it into the chat box, and we'll do our best to answer it. Also on the line today, as I said, is Stephen Van Alstyne, the VP of Education at the Canadian Payroll Association. As we're waiting for questions to come through, to request a copy of the full report, please go to hays.ca/payroll. We'll also have a recording of this webinar available on our YouTube channel later on today. So let's see what questions we have. We have a question about where to find a guide. So hopefully we've been able to cover that one off. And now just looking through, I think. Yes, bear with me. Yes, we have a question here, which I think is probably. Do we have Stephen on the line?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Andy.
So, Stephen, this is one for you, I think. From a business perspective, what are some of the key benefits of hiring a payroll professional who is certified versus hiring one who isn't?
Well, what we're finding, Andy, is that individuals who are certified have all the compliance and legislative underpinning in the academic programs that they've taken regarding our program. So we have the payroll compliance legislation. We're talking on the practitioner side, and then I'll touch on the manager side. But on the PCP, the practitioner side, those individuals have the payroll compliance legislation, the Payroll Fundamentals 1 and the Payroll Fundamentals 2 learning. Those programs are best described as legislative in orientation, and then the payroll from the employee perspective and payroll from the employer perspective. So it deals a lot with how to do the gross to net pay calculation, how to conduct your remittances, your year-end reporting. So all of that is critical, and the compliance side of things is learning of course, the most legislatively up-to-date information so that you can be compliant for the organization. Payroll practitioners annually pay over $800 billion in salary and wages, and they remit over $200 billion to government. So getting that correct is critical, but beyond that, the compliance jeopardy to organizations in not correctly meeting the legislative obligations can be quite costly to an organization. So again, having that certification goes a long way to ensuring that individuals have that right knowledge, can apply that right knowledge, and then looking at some of the requirements for the certification holders, they have to adhere to a professional code of conduct. They have to, there's continuing professional education requirements on an annual basis that have to be met that, encourage them to be kept up to date. And then, of course, we introduced last year a PCP work experience requirement. So individuals actually getting the certification have to have a level of experience. So knowing that you've got a certification holder will assure potential employers that individuals have that experience and can apply it. So we're also continually updating our education programs. For example, last year we undertook probably one of the biggest learning management system upgrades that we've done in over a decade. And that, again, reinforces the learning, enables those candidates and those certification holders to have a much better perspective on the requirements that are involved in effectively administering payrolls for organizations.
Great. Great. So from a business point of view, clear benefits in terms of management of risk, and also ensuring that the people you're hiring have got a track record that you can count on. And I would guess with what you'd also, well, I don't know if you'd agree with me, Stephen, in terms of how that places the candidates. The survey shows that desired credentials are becoming an increasingly important factor. So for anyone looking for a new job, for a career, then you would definitely be promoting payroll professionals being certified to give them an advantage in their career search. Would that be fair?
That's that's a very accurate statement, Andy. We very closely monitor a lot of the major job posting services that exist out there, and organizations like yours who we have close relationships with, and a lot of them are saying, we want to know what the differentiators are, what can differentiate a candidate. And as we've identified here through looking specifically at salary, we can see where certification makes a huge impact. And then again, in those job postings that we see and monitor, being an association, we look right across all avenues, including recruiting firms like yours, Andy, but also looking at, again, those job posting sites, and many of them are starting to request certification. Specifically, our certifications are the Payroll Compliance Practitioner for the practitioner and the CPM for the manager, but many postings and recruiters will often, utilize payroll certification or accreditation or designation. Really what employers are looking for, if they're not well versed in what our specific certification is they know that education, they know that professional development, they know that those things make a difference. They are a differentiator, and to your point, most importantly, they're an important risk manager, because again, payroll is commonly the largest expense of an organization. And so if you can't take risk in having somebody that does not is not properly versed in what the requirements are, because basically the only time that the Canada Revenue Agency will know that an organization is not adhering to the compliance requirements is if they're audited, because you could take $1 of tax for somebody, you could take $100 of tax for somebody. There's nothing that's going to be an indicator to the Canada Revenue Agency that that tax value is not correct unless the organization is audited, and those audits do happen. We regularly deal with members here at the association that contact us because they have not been treating certain benefits correctly. They've not been assessing bonuses correctly. So again, the certification holders, because of their adherence to that code of conduct and the knowledge that they have, helps to mitigate that risk for organizations.
Sure. Another question that's just come through, Stephen, on certification. This is sort of more of it's a systems question. The question is, what's the most efficient payroll tool of the future? I'm not sure whether you'd necessarily want to put your name to that, but the follow-up question for that is it worth getting an SAP certification or similar? I mean, what would your views on going down that kind of route be?
I can give you, what I will do is I'll give you some perspectives on, we've got quite a large membership. So we've got a 20,000 organizational-based membership, which services about 50,000 practitioners. So, the mid to larger size organizations, most are members of the Canadian Payroll Association. We regularly do surveys, and what we find is a lot of organizations are utilizing service providers, the big ones being Ceridian, ADP, CGI in Quebec, who services Desjardins. There is use in enterprise-wide systems like SAP, like PeopleSoft, like Oracle. There's some specialized providers like Avante, like onpayroll.ca, like NEBS, Payworks. There's a multitude of them. I think getting something like an SAP certification, there is absolute value in that, because it does, again, it's something that can further differentiate a candidate to an organization. The difficulty is it is a very niche certification with regard to payroll administration. So an individual certainly will have opportunity, and potentially better opportunity, if they do have the SAP certification. But again, that's going to be impingent upon job availability and organizations that actually are utilizing that particular enterprise-wide system. So to kind of sum up, it's not as commonly used out in industry as some of those other things like service providers.
Sure, I understand. So whilst it could give you an advantage in a small number of instances, actually, more broadly, it could narrow your potential opportunities.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for that. Another question we have here is that besides our salary guide here, what other places can payroll professionals look at to get an understanding of what is the market rate to better begin negotiating for an increase in compensation? And in addition to the payroll salary guide, I could advise people to look on hays.ca in our salary centre, where we do provide more detailed breakdown, not just on market rate, but also on comparability in terms of benefits for positions, because in terms of negotiating, whether that's with a current employer or whether it's with a future employer, we should always consider that it's not just the base salary, but it's also a mix of other benefits, whether that's RRSP, whether that's health and dental, as we talked about, whether it's vacation. So we'd be more than happy to help out looking at comparability between packages, as I said, if people want to visit our salary centre. Another question here, which I think this one would probably come for you, Stephen. How have recent market or economic changes changed how payroll has been implemented and perhaps changed the role of payroll professionals?
I think that's an excellent question. I think really some of the things that we're hearing from the field is that with the economy and some of the transitions that are happening economically, people are having to do more with less. So we are hearing that some of our practitioners are taking on more responsibility. Somebody had mentioned here, I noticed, incorporating union negotiation skills into something that they could learn from the association, and really, we could get niche oriented, but there's jeopardy in doing that because obviously there's lots of great labor relations courses out there. But what we're finding is the practitioner is expected to be more of a multifaceted resource for the organization. So, we've got some great seminars that we have that can build on the skills that somebody will get from their certification, like terminations. We're finding that when organizations do terminations, they are really relying on the payroll practitioner in the organization to give them the full scope of how that impacts the individual at the organization. So they're wanting to know what are the legislative risks, what are the packages that have to be provided, how are they treated, how are they reported. So again, I think it's really all about keeping that education up, keeping your knowledge up, and there's some great resources that are out there through web seminars, through individual PDF sessions, which of course the association has a number of. As I said, terminations is one. But again, what we find also in an economic downturn, you have an increase in things like court orders, garnishment, family maintenance orders. Sure. So again, sometimes a practitioner will find that something that they've never had to deal with, and all of a sudden they're faced with having to deal with those kinds of things. So it's really about you may not have that knowledge, but knowing that that knowledge is not far away from you, from being available, whether that be taking a seminar or whether it be becoming a member of our association, where we've got great resources. We've got consultants on site that can assist individuals in walking them through some of this stuff. And it's just having that confidence that you know that you've got those resources available to you. Great.
Another question, sorry, I'm probably going to fire all of these at you by the sound of it, Stephen. The question was, what other payroll positions would a CPM qualify for? This is somebody with the CPM designation, just wanting to understand what the sort of range of options available to them would be.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I just want to give people a little bit of scope on the kind of the proportion of payroll compliance practitioners to certified payroll managers. We currently have about 14,000 certification holders. All 14,000 are payroll compliance practitioners. Of those 14,000 payroll compliance practitioners, about 3,400 hold their certified payroll manager. So that's about a 25% ratio. We're not looking to build or to have all of those PCPs become CPMs necessarily, because the individual here has rightly identified that there are only so many payroll manager roles out there. Probably about 75% of organizations have 3 or fewer resources within their payroll department, and in about 40% of the cases, there's only the payroll department or the payroll is done by one person, and sometimes they're only doing that part of the time. So for those certified payroll managers, those roles at larger organizations, they tend not to come up or be available as often, obviously, as just a general practitioner role. So again, I think it's about being multifaceted in terms of the skill set that you bring to the table. We find that individuals will take on pension roles at organizations. They can take on compensation roles at organizations. Just benefit in general, benefits administration roles. There's lots of great opportunities and lots of variety in terms of the skill set.
So I think we lost. Do we have Stephen still on the line? So I thought Stephen just dropped out there.
Yeah, I did drop out. I am still here. Did you hear my response?
Yeah, no, I think we got that. I think I may have just had a slight hitch on my side.
Okay.
So just with that, we had there was a question which was kind of aligned to what you were saying. It's response to a previous question. So we had question for somebody who's in a sort of one-person payroll office, and you talked about this sort of small businesses that may actually be doing a fairly broad role, you know, and actually taking on senior level responsibilities, but are still been sort of paid, and by the sounds of this, sort of titled at a more junior level. They're asking how do we move our industry to move faster into senior management levels? Obviously, that's could be a specific question for one company, but I suppose the broader question of how payroll has been recognised as a profession, even in small businesses, and is that something that that the CPA has a view on?
Yeah, that's you know, that's the challenge, and I think one of the big positions that the association has taken over the years is moving payroll from being seen as a back office function to something that is more significant in terms of the business operations. So again, we know what the compliance risk is. We know usually the labor cost associated with payroll. It is one of the most significant expenses within an organization. The jeopardy of not complying correctly can be very costly to an organization. So we have really, I think, moved the needle quite significantly, particularly within the last 15 years, with regard to the perception of payroll, as I say, being a back office kind of function, to one where people are recognizing the compliance aspect. And one of the things that I encourage practitioners to do is to be an advocate for yourself and the role that you play within the organization. Utilize the information that we provide to our members and to the broader business community around things like the compliance with the legislation and regulation. There's over 200 pieces of legislation and regulation that are tied to payroll nationally across the country. So if somebody worked for an organization that had operations in every provincial and territorial jurisdiction, they would have to keep track of 200 pieces of legislation. And payroll probably has the most ever-changing legislation, for lack of a better word, because obviously with tax rates changing, pension CPP rates changing, EI rates changing, employment and labor standards legislation changing. You really have to keep on top of it. So again, the organization needs to know and be confident in the individual that's sitting in that chair, and that's why certification helps to reinforce that. And that's, I think, a big part of the reason why the profile of the payroll professional in business has been increasing, because people are becoming more aware of that payroll plays. You know, so it's important to talk about the compliance risk, the legislation and regulatory change monitoring that has to be done within the organization. You have to be a huge advocate for yourself. And you know, we're seeing that profile change. We're seeing the salaries come up. We're seeing, again, the differentiators in salary based on certification, and our certification is well recognized within the business community, and we continue to work hard to make sure that that happens. For example, it was a result of some feedback that we were getting from the business community that we put the experience requirement into the certification, which is with accounting designations, with HR designations, experience is a requirement for those, and so we shouldn't be any different. And then again, that helps to elevate the status of the certification and to, quite frankly, the status of the profession. So we are being seen definitely more as a profession. So for those individuals that are slugging it out at your organization in a solo operation, as a payroll practitioner, again, don't be shy about sharing those figures, those statistics, talk about the value that you bring to the organization, and utilize the association. We commonly are providing information out to our membership that assists them in raising the profile of the role. That's why we don't hesitate when we have the opportunity to work with an organization like Hays to bring payroll salaries to the forefront.
Great. And we have a couple of questions actually linked to that, which were, one of them is around how seniority impacts salary rate, and I suppose basically to sum up, in terms of promoting to your employer the benefits of accreditation, the benefits of experience. Clearly the salary guide is a tool for doing that, but also there's a lot of material that the CPA you can access through the CPA that would actually help you make the case. So I'm not sure if we've got any more questions come through. We've got one specific one. We've got somebody who's been certified for 4 years as a member of the CPA, and unfortunately cannot find a job, and they are based in Calgary, and without knowing any of the background, can't comment on their exact situation. The question specifically is, how do I find a job? And would be more than happy. My contact details are on the screen at the moment. Whether this person's actually been in contact with Hays directly, or whether they'd like to be, we would welcome anyone contacting us. As it's difficult to comment on a specific situation that somebody's in, but we'd be more than happy to give career advice to anyone who wants it. I think that's where we're at on questions for the moment. Stephen, were there any other questions that came through that you saw that we hadn't covered?
There is one, Andy, about realigning payroll positions in federal and provincial NOC coding to reflect current versus, well, the writer has said 19th century job requirements, and I actually couldn't be more in agreement with that particular individual. Right now, the NOC, the federal NOC code, the role for payroll is payroll clerk. We do regular research at the association, and clerk is utilized in less than 5% of role titles within payroll. And in a lot of cases, the reason why the word clerk is used is because it is a role within a unionized environment. So that is something that we have been working with the federal government on. They only do reviews of NOC on an infrequent basis. So we have been asked to provide our input. We have suggested that the role be changed from payroll clerk to payroll administrator. We've also suggested that the role of payroll manager be added into the NOC code. We have a great relationship with certain government bodies that do the same kind of classification, and Alberta is one where we have a very positive relationship, and we actually have made some headway in differentiating any of the feedback that we put forward to the Alberta government. They, without question, utilize it. So I think we are, you know, it's not only about the work that we do ourselves here at the association, but it's also about trying to influence things within business, within the business environment, within the government environment as well. And so we continue to advocate on behalf of our members. So I'm pleased to hear that that there are some of our members online. There's perhaps some prospective members. You know, we likewise, as Andy has suggested, you're recommended to reach out to Hays with regard to recruitment opportunities, and likewise you're encouraged to reach out to our association if you feel that there's benefits that you would garner from being a member. As we've seen, certification is a differentiator. We've got our professional development. We've got lots of resources available, Job Connect. So by all means, our URL is very simple. It's payroll.ca. And again, I want to thank Hays for really, this is the third year in which we've worked with Hays on this survey, and I think it's really invaluable to the payroll community, and we really appreciate Hays taking the initiative and the lead on this, because it is really one of the only payroll salary surveys in Canada.
Well, thank you very much for that, Stephen. I know, Hays, we do greatly appreciate the association with the Canadian Payroll Association as well. It's a very valuable partnership to actually ensure that we're putting together the information that's actually required or sought after by the market. I think that's all we have time for on questions at the moment.
That's right, Andy. Actually, I'm just going to cut you short there. Sorry, that is all the questions that we've got time for, and we've booked out 45 minutes for this call. So as Andy just mentioned, and the recording of the webinar will be available later today at hays.ca. Also, you'll be contacted shortly with details on how you can get your hands on a copy of the guide. Again, I just want to thank you both. Thank you so much for presenting, and also for all the questions. I think we had some very, very interesting questions today, which we can maybe incorporate into future reports that we put together for you. So again, thanks for taking part, and I hope you find the guide interesting and useful as part of your role.